What used to be done either face-to-face or on paper and pencil has increasingly been mediated by a computer and connection to the internet. There's a wide range of things that are selection tests, and they're used for very important reasons to help us determine who should be offered a job. We can use the term test, assessment, selection tool, selection procedure. Each of these can be used interchangeably, basically mean a tool designed to measure attributes that are key to being successful in the job, and who has those attributes and should be prioritized in terms of being offered a job. All organizations use tests, whether it's formalized or informal. There isn't always a systematic process, but there should be. And the data that we derive from that should be captured so we can monitor how well we're performing this very important function. As we said, very important decisions are made about employment, and there's a history of discrimination, and there are laws that we have to comply to. Beyond that, most organizations have explicit values toward diversity because it is a good idea. It helps organizations to thrive. So we can capture this very important data, and we should, and that's one of the primary reasons that an HRIS is important. So whether it's a paper and pencil or face-to-face process that we capture and enter into the HRIS, or increasingly whether the interviews and tests that we're using for selection are used on the internet, and data can be captured more readily. In either case, we should be trying to capture this kind of data about selection so we can monitor whether there is any kind of adverse impact that we need to correct. Using selection tests is a way to make the selection decision more efficient and have a process that is more systematic. And technology, in many ways, has helped us to advance that, but in many ways, it has also brought certain risks. And it has made the availability of selection tests and their administration a lot easier, but sometimes the content of the tests has not been fully vetted. And that's still a key component of it's not just about how you deliver the test or deliver the interview. It has to do with the substance of those tests, the questions that you ask, and how well they predict job success. Now, in a perfect world, different ways of delivering a test, whether it be by paper and pencil or whether it be via a keyboard and mouse, would result in the same decisions about who to offer the job to first. But it's not true in the real world. We do see it in certain circumstances. Personality tests and career inventories seem to be fairly equivalent whether you're doing it paper and pencil or whether you're doing it by a computer. But other types of tests, like ability tests, tend to have different results, whether they are paper and pencil and computerized. So that's something to consider. And again, especially important because those ability tests often can result in adverse impact. They can, in many circumstances, be very predictive of job success. But again, these are different outcomes that we have to weigh. And if the method of delivering it is exacerbating adverse impact, we should understand that and avoid that. Now, one reason we see this is technology has allowed us to do things like timing of tests in a much more convenient way. And that particular seems to be a problem with creating this adverse impact. And so just be aware that that's always something we should be looking at, because we might think we're taking one step forward when ultimately we're taking two steps back. We have to be careful and, one, first be systematic and capture the data and look at it with clear eyes and make adjustments when we have to. And also be concerned about the substance of the test. It's easy to buy a test from a consultant, to have it administered via the computer. The hard part is really being confident and having evidence that it is clearly associated with job success. We can do this if we have the data, and again, technology is great because it helps us capture that data more readily. But the other part of that then is analyzing that data. And some of the things we learned in analytics, like the correlation coefficient and the t-test, those are all good tests that can be used to look at whether employee tests are correlated with job success. Technology is, in some ways, just amazing because it has allowed us to recreate and simulate working situations in a way that was impossible before. And when we think about the potential for this in the future, in applications like virtual reality or augmented reality, these are all ways that I think are very interesting. And this is a question of this fidelity. And fidelity means accurate. Okay, we're honing in on the details. And we can have a test that really hones in on the details and is very accurate in terms of that context. But it may capture a more limited scope of the things that mean being successful on the job. A test, like a multiple choice test that you might do through an ability test, that may not have as much fidelity, as much accuracy, but in a more efficient way, you can sample a wider range of problems that might have to be solved in a work context, and therefore you get a wider sampling of behaviors. And currently, what we can predict from a simulation can be matched by more simple tests, cheaper tests like a multiple choice type of test. And so, in terms of cost effectiveness, that is still probably a real consideration that we have to have. There are certain circumstances where we need to look at particular job behavior that is in a high fidelity context, especially when the criticality of that behavior and the consequences it has, when it might be life or death type consequences, then I think those simulations really tend to win out. One issue that we have to consider is test security. And with tests being online, a question arises is this actually the person that we're going to employ who's taking this test? Or do they have a substitute to take this test? And of course, security is an issue, whether it's using computer technology or even paper and pencil. There's security questions. Interestingly, I think during the pandemic, the last couple of years, I think there's been really big advancements in technology using webcams, and there's been protocols connected with that I think have really reached a point where they're used pretty widely. I know universities are using them quite widely. As we mentioned, The ability to capture data is so key to being able to manage our selection systems and being able to monitor whether they're achieving the outcomes that we need them to. And so database design is a real consideration. We have to be able to store and track this information and be able to pull it out so we can analyze it. So it's important here when we're looking at products for doing tests that we have very robust discussions about integration, whether the product can get the data into our systems. And another consideration is how are HR professionals going to use the scoring data? Is there a decision rule? Is there a cutoff? Oftentimes, testing companies will provide a range of scores that are green, yellow, or red. Green in a range where you can be fully confident, yellow where you should proceed with caution, considering other sources of information, and red being don't hire this person. You could, in some, have a raw score that goes into a regression equation that you have that combines the different tools you're using, whether it's a multiple choice test and an interview and a simulation. Those things, we could take the scores and have a statistical score that ranks our most promising candidates to the least promising candidates. So, but in general, when we rely on strict judgment for combining different parts of the hiring decision, we tend to have worse decisions than if we have a more systematic approach that's backed up by data.